So do we use sound effects, right?
Yeah, from time to time.
There's a sound effect library. Do we have a drum roll in this sound effect library?
I think we can find ourselves a drum roll, definitely.
Because I have some pretty exciting news.
Oh, that's fun. Okay.
So today, the World Happiness Report came out.
Okay, today.
Yeah, the 10th annual report.
Okay.
And this is a ranking of the world's countries by happiness. And according to the report, the world's happiest place.
Yes. What is it?
Is?
Okay, here's the drum roll.
Finland.
Finland. Wow.
For the 5th consecutive year.
Wow, that is amazing. 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
And Finland. Wow. And so I'm curious to know do you know where Canada was ranked?
Number 15.
Okay.
Where do you think US was?
Definitely lower.
16.
A little lower.
Right
16.
under us. 16.
See, yeah, we're pretty tied there.
We'll put a link to the complete list on our website. But this report contains a mystery, one that Dr. Jack Muskat, the Medcan Clinical Director of Psychology, is going to explore with the Eat, Move, Think senior producer, Russell Gragg, who recently returned from 5 weeks in Finland.
Okay, these are the detectives on the case, but what is the mystery that they are solving here?
The mystery. Here, I will tell you. I'm glad you asked. The
Do we need another
mystery
drum
is
roll?
Finland is darker and colder than Canada.
Yeah.
It's got fewer days of sunlight. Helsinki has a much colder average temperature than Toronto. And so the question is this: how is this cold and dark place so happy?
Yeah.
How is this cold and dark place so happy? And what can Canadians who live in cold and dark much of the year, what can Canadians learn from the Finns?
That's what we're going to explore today.
That's the mystery. That's what we're going to explore today.
Okay, let's get to it.
I'm Christopher Shulgin. I'm executive producer of Eat, Move, Think.
I'm Jasmine Ratch. I'm managing producer of Eat, Move, Think.
And I'm Dr. Jack Muskat.
Okay, to recap, the World Happiness Report ranked Finland as the world's happiest place. And this isn't Finland ranking itself as the world's happiest place. This is a survey. This is a global survey that has scientific rigor in its methodology. Dr. Jeffrey Sachs is director of Columbia University's Earth Institute. He's on the advisory board for this. It's got academic heavyweights. This is real. Finland, this small, dark place up near the Arctic Circle. What is going on? Dr. Jack Muskat, do you have any thoughts about this?
Finland is a small country, 5 million people. I think that if you're living above the Arctic Circle, you've got to find a way to be happy. You're not going to be living there very long. So one of the questions is how, when people rank things, is how sensitive are they to their own emotions and feelings, and what are their own expectations of what happiness is. So we may be seeing differences where Canada ranks lower because we have higher expectations for happiness. So we're not as happy, but objectively we may be happier. And so to answer that, we're delighted to have our senior producer, Russell Gragg, who recently returned from Finland, where he investigated Finnish culture.
Thanks so much, Jack. Great to be here.
So, Russ, of all the places to visit, why would you choose Finland?
Honestly, Jack, I really wanted an extended trip to Europe after so many years of lockdowns and what have you. But I really didn't want to go anywhere that was going to be overrun with tourists. I wanted to go somewhere for at least a month where I could become a local in that environment. And I really figured that Helsinki in the middle of winter, probably not a lot of tourists.
And you know why?
Because it's cold as hell there, Jack.
But I actually looked it up, and I can't believe that Helsinki is parallel to St. Petersburg, which is very far north, and that Finland is mostly trees and mostly dark, and it is much darker than Toronto. It gets 200 sun hours less than Toronto. It's colder, and so you're not going to have a lot of tourists. So I think you chose well.
When I got there, I was basing everything on a vignette from a 30-year-old Jim Jarmusch movie called Night on Earth, which followed the travails of a Helsinki taxi driver in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, and it just spoke to me. I said, that's where I want to be in the dead of winter.
And so when you got off the flight and you looked around, you just saw a happy place. This felt like a happy place.
People were dancing in the streets, singing at the top of their lungs. It was a Disney musical. No, it was a very serious place. People were polite, pleasant, prompt, perhaps a little curt. There were not a lot of outward signs of joy. And I found that to not measure up to what I guess I was expecting based on this consistent ranking with the World Happiness Index.
Right. And did you get a chance to talk to any Finns about that World Happiness ranking? Were they aware of it?
Everybody was aware of it.
And what was their reaction? This kind of dour, Lutheran-based, cold country, and it's dark all the time, and all the things we talk about, seasonal affective disorder, darkness, cold, small population. What was their reaction?
Most of them said when they were first awarded the ranking, they simply didn't believe, they figured it was some sort of a mathematical error, that there was no way that they could be the happiest nation on earth. But over the years, they've come to accept the methodology behind determining the rankings.
And Russ, other than talking to the average Finn about the happiness report, did you get any expert advice from someone or someone's who actually understand the Finnish character and psyche?
Okay, I had some great conversations, including one with Frank Martela. Frank Martela is a philosopher and a researcher at Aalto University. He's a well-respected author, and his book, A Wonderful Life, it came out just a couple of years ago.
Right. It's a great book, and it talks about what people want to know is the meaning of life and how we can have more purpose. So what did he have to say?
Well, let's have a listen.
So I'm Frank Martela. I'm a philosopher and researcher of psychology at Aalto University in Helsinki, Finland. Yeah, so it comes from this World Happiness Report, which have these rankings, annual rankings of countries. And it's based on a question where they asked, think about your life from a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is the worst possible life and 10 is the best possible life. Where would you put yourself on this ladder? It's not asking you that, did you smile today, or did you laugh today, or did you enjoy joy or something like that? But it's more about this kind of satisfaction with your life, that are you satisfied with the life conditions and so forth. So I've been saying that Finland is the land of the quiet satisfaction. So people might not be outwardly express their joy all the time, but then when they contemplate on their life, then they think, well, things are actually quite okay in my life. And it's also due to that fact that, I don't think that if you think about the scale from 0 to 10, the Finland's high ranking is not because there will be more people who rate their life as 10 in Finland, but it's because of social security system, welfare state, and all these things make sure that there's less people who score 1, 2, 3, or 4 on the scale. So that's kind of the secret to Finland being the happiest country, is that we are quietly satisfied and we have less people who are highly unsatisfied with their lives.
Well, that's very interesting perspective that Dr. Martela is saying. It's not about how happy we are or how well we're doing, but how unwell we're not doing. So it's a kind of modest satisfaction, which I think may play well in a country like Finland, which was actually ruled for 500 years by the Swedes, and then in the last 100 years by the Russians. And they've just decided to keep their heads down and not be so unhappy. So what are the Finns doing, Russ, that allows them to rank very high on the happiness rankings?
The Finns have something that they call Sisu. And so I spoke with a number of Finns about their personal definitions of Sisu, and here's some of their responses.
My impression of Sisu is this kind of independent spirit that kind of gets you through these kind of trying periods, and it's a lot about determination.
Somehow I linked it more to nature. So let's say if I was hiking or if I was skiing, and I would see that there's a really big uphill and I have to get on top of some hill, and maybe then I would be okay, let's do it with Sisu, and then I'll just do it, I'm sure it kind of required some Sisu to just to live in Finland back in the days, because it's not so evident why people decided to settle here, because it is dark and it is cold and it is not so pleasant, I guess, always the life.
I guess it's something perseverance in face of like insurmountable objectives.
Here's Frank Martela again.
So there's one researcher, this Emilia Lahti, who has like done her PhD work around the concept of Sisu. And I think like she's quite often referring to that, when there's like big obstacles in your life, you still have this like courage and like perseverance to go on. And that's when the Sisu kicks in a way.
And do you feel that Sisu contributes to the Finnish sense of, I guess, maybe not happiness, but comfort, satisfaction?
Yeah, in a way, I think like Finns in general probably are more comfortable with like negative emotions than some other nations. That it seems to be that, that the Finnish people, if you meet a Finn on the street and ask, how are you doing? It's kind of like okay to say, not good, in many countries that you're supposed that whatever you're actually feeling, you're supposed to say that I'm fine. But like I've had like these encounters with like people I haven't seen like in 5 years, and then I ask meet them on the street, how are you doing? Actually, got quite bad. My boyfriend left me, and I'm unemployment right now. In a way, the culture tolerates more negative emotions, and like so people can be more expressive about like these things, and also like which makes it like easier to accept them.
So Russ, when you heard that, when you asked Frank about Sisu, were you satisfied with his response? Did your Sisu kick in?
My Sisu definitely kicked in through the trip in Helsinki, and what I loved about it is that it can take so many different forms. It translates all the way from that down to, I really don't want to clean the cat box today, but I have to do it. I'm just going to grit my teeth and do it. So it really encompasses everything from a national level down to what's happening down the hall in your apartment.
So I think if I hear it correctly, and there's a lot to unpack here, is that the Finns' tolerance for unhappiness or uncomfortableness is much higher than our own. We want everything to be cushy in our society. And so when you have a society that basically accepts that you're going to feel uncomfortable from time to time, that what Frank Martela is also saying, which is very important, is that there's a cultural imperative to show Sisu. And as we would say here, suck it up, buttercup.
I think so. And I think the Finns are happy to keep it sort of their little secret.
Interestingly, what I find about the Scandinavian culture, whether it's, for those who remember the Ingmar Bergman films where death is walking around on the beach, there's something very uplifting when you can face the dark side. And even metal, which is really probably the most, nihilistic, dark music around, is very uplifting and very popular in Finland. And it makes total sense because they're allowing themselves to experience the full gamut of emotion, but not necessarily be trapped by any one thing.
Absolutely. And there is no place on earth where heavy metal is more popular than Finland. And in fact, if you walk into a crowded bar in Helsinki, probably 1 out of every 3 people in the bar either plays in or has played in a metal band. And this is what Frank has to say.
Yeah, it's true that the heavy metal is nowhere so popular as in Finland. So, and of course, heavy metal is a music where you're able to express your like anger and your negative emotions and sadness and so forth.
But I think a great definition of Sisu comes from Finnish author Katja Pantzar. She's the author of a book called Everyday Sisu. I had a chance to chat with her as well.
I would essentially say that it is a unique form of Finnish fortitude in the face of challenges, big or small. But then anybody can pick up or tap into the mindset. You don't need to be Finnish or live in Finland to do it. It's a kind of strength, courage that you tap into on a daily basis. And it could be something very small. It doesn't need to be that you're going to run a marathon or fight a war. And this idea that you just kind of pull your socks up and tackle whether it has to do with your health and well-being, when you just feel like sitting on the couch.
So I asked Katja how she incorporated Sisu into her everyday life. And she had a number of examples, but her primary one was that she went swimming in the Baltic Sea almost every day of the year, straight through the winter. She belongs to a growing community of ice bathers, And this is how she gets herself going every morning.
Why I often use the winter swimming as a good example of Sisu is because it is something that is maybe not intuitively, oh, it's -10 and it's snowing out, I think I'll go for a dip in the Baltic Sea. But it's a good example of gathering yourself up and tapping into courage to do something that seems difficult. It's not lying on the beach on a sweltering day with a cocktail in your hand, but doing something difficult, then you feel so good, partly because, of course, when you have a dip of just 30 seconds to a minute, all of the endorphins, the happy hormones kick in. And not only do you feel physically good, your heart is racing and the blood is flowing. And I think for most people living in Finland, a winter swim really means a winter dip, maximum of a few minutes, and you go to a place that's very well equipped. Usually you can do it sort of natural somewhere, but most people go to a place where there's changing rooms and a sauna and hot showers nearby, so that after they've gone for their dip, they can go inside and warm up. And of course, it's a very social activity. So there's other people there, you're laughing, most people feel really good because they've come out of the water. And it's often a hole that's carved into the water during the icy frozen months. So it quite literally is a dip, and you feel great. But post-dip, you're with people who 99% of the time are happy and upbeat because they've just gone for a dip. You're doing something that does seem a bit crazy.
Well, okay, winter swimming. Well, that's a great example of Sisu because it kind of focuses your attention. Like, it's quite interesting because I think what she's really saying, and I want to relate it back to metal. I mean, if we think of, Rage Against the Machine, what we're doing is we're so controlled in life by so many things. And what would be the most daring, outrageous, stupid thing to do? And that's jump into freezing ice cold water in the winter and swim about. And I think, as she mentions endorphins, I think the idea that we can actually do something is very elevating and very fun and very special. And I think that as I'm hearing it, I mean, I wouldn't go near it, but it's certainly good to watch other people do that. Where's my Sisu? It's in the sauna.
And that's good that you mentioned that, Jack, because part 2 of the winter dip is definitely the sauna.
And then, of course, the sauna.
And back to Katja.
Is the other thing that really makes winter swimming much easier. A lot of people do winter swim without going into a sauna, and they want the cold effect to stay with them. But a lot of people won't go without a sauna because then they can warm up in this quintessential Finnish steam bath, this sauna. And that is a place where you're supposed to go without your clothes on. Of course, there are many places where you can keep your swimmers on or a towel if you feel uncomfortable being naked. So it's not compulsory. But the idea is that you leave everything behind. You go in, nobody cares what you look like. Nobody is like checking you out. You've left all your possessions behind. So it doesn't matter whether you came by bicycle or BMW, whether you have a Rolex or no watch or whatever. And there's a kind of equality and a kind of calm and peace in the sauna. It's like a temple for mind and soul where you steam away all the things that are bothering you, whether it's, let's say, your muscles are tense or you feel cold or you feel stressed or you have some issues that are troubling you and you just need a break. You can't take your phone in there, so it's offline. You have a little digital detox automatically. And you feel great after you've had a good steam. And the hot and the cold, a lot of people, myself included, if I have time and the sauna is on in one of the places where I go swimming, I'll go back and forth. So it becomes a bit of a meditation walk. Go and have a dip and then go and have a sauna and then get all warm and then go back into the water and do that many, many times. And it's really like having, I would say, going to some spa or going on a little mini trip or doing something. I mean, some people get that sense of high when they exercise, but you leave everything behind.
Well, Russ, as I'm listening to Katja, I mean, it sounds very interesting. I mean, when you look at the way she describes it as we're all the same, we're all naked, we're going into a temple, and when you think of religion and in baptism and water and dipping and purifying, and Finland's a really strange place. I mean, we're living mostly in a secular society in Canada, but I looked it up, and Finland has a national church, and it's a Lutheran church, and it's paid for by the government. And so you have 81% of Finns are members of the church, but fewer than 25% attend church. But they're all going to the sauna, and they're all dipping, and they're all feeling some kind of purification. And I don't know, it walks like religion, it sounds like religion, it feels good like religion used to feel, and maybe they're onto something here.
They're not speaking in tongues nor handling snakes, but I would subscribe to this religion.
And the other thing, the whole idea of community, I mean, the idea of, and what we have in our society, huge inequality and huge differences in people's feelings about what they have and where they belong, and knowing, as she says, that you can show up on your bicycle or in your fancy car and you're all the same. And there's a sense of, I think, purification, but more importantly, an attachment to that we're just part of the world. We're not just a speck, but we're also part of the world and part of our own humanity and community. So, Russ, we're hearing a lot about the mental health benefits, the social benefits of being together, and the sense of joy and laughter. What are the physical benefits, if any, of this dip and sauna?
Katja has a great explanation. Let's have a listen.
For most people, they're really positive. The heart starts beating, the blood is flowing, the happy hormones kick in, there's this swimmer's high. And there is a scientist and a researcher, Hannu Rintamäki, in Finland, in Oulu, but he did one of the first studies where they actually monitored people in a lab setting in a cold water pool so that they could record the responses and say, we have data that shows all of these responses. But he said to me something that I've always kept in mind, which is, it's just getting yourself up and going to the water. You usually walk there. All the things that happen, you're in touch with nature. A lot of us has completely lost our connection, or we have a very limited connection to nature. It may be somewhere where we go via car on the weekend, but to have that daily contact with water, the earth, the sky, the air, all of those things. And he also said to me that while it is not a workout, the physiological pressure, the strain that it puts on the body, just going in for 30 seconds to a minute, is the same as walking up and down stairs for 15 to 20 minutes. So you really are getting the heart pumping and the blood flowing and a whole bunch of responses that are often dormant.
So I think she's saying some very important things here, because sometimes you can be in your head too much and over-intellectualize things. And the most important thing you can do, because we've learned in science that the brain is no longer an information processing tool, but it's called embodied cognition. The brain works in your whole body. The whole mind-body works together. And so if you're doing something to your body, it's going to affect your mind. It's going to affect your mood. And particularly if you're doing something that's novel, because people like novelty. And it is very novel to jump in ice cold water for 30 seconds. And that will kind of give you a boost and give you a bit of a wake up, literally a wake up, to focus on the here and now and to be present. It's kind of yoga, but really fast.
Katja explains this further.
We winter swimmers often say, we arrive kind of cranky and then we go into the water and it's like we're totally different people when we come out, and we use it as a technique. Like if we're tired or stressed, or like before I reach for an aspirin, okay, I'll just go for a dip and see if that gets rid of the crick in my neck or the whatever is ailing me. And about 90% of the time, it does.
I really like what she's saying here, Russ. It's the first time that's the hardest, but once you get the benefit, you're going to want to go back, and you're going to want to spend 45 seconds in the water, and you're going to want to impress your friends, and they're going to want to support you. And I think that you no longer think about the crick of your neck because you've got, I don't know, frostbite in your fingers. But nonetheless, you're feeling better, you're feeling different, you're part of something that you can do. And maybe that is what Sisu is about, is really helping us recruit the strengths in ourselves, because we're so busy worrying about the things that bother us, the anxiety, the depression, the stress.
One of the things I noticed about the Finns is that while they're very active in their day-to-day lives, there isn't a huge gym culture or fitness culture. More so, it's, I'm going to choose to cycle. I'm going to choose to walk. I'm going to choose to maybe take a jog, as opposed to I'm going to the gym and pump iron and hit the treadmill. That's much less of a concern to them.
Fitness or activity is not always a destination. It's something you incorporate into your daily lives. You've probably noticed there's bike lanes everywhere, and they're maintained as well. So now that we have snow and ice, you can bike. They're not really, really super icy or just totally unmanageable. If there is a sunny day, you will see people walking, just maximizing, especially on a weekend in the winter, maximizing the few hours of sunlight that we have this far north during the winter months. And I think 80% of Finns, it's one of the most common forms of exercise, is going for a brisk walk. And something that I don't actually know anybody who doesn't really do it. You don't need special exercise clothes. You just need warm clothes and comfortable walking shoes. But the other thing is, just about everybody in Finland lives about 200 meters from nature, from the nearest park. Even in the middle of the city, there are swaths of green. We're very lucky in Helsinki. We're surrounded by the sea. So I think that makes a big difference as well.
I think Katja's really onto something here. She's kind of saying, listen, there's nature everywhere. Go for a walk, ride your bike, do it simple. Don't give up the things you've always been doing, but recognize that we need to be in nature. We need to feed our bodies and our minds simultaneously. And you can be thinking about things while you're walking, and it does a lot to your mental health. And I would totally agree with that.
Even when you feel awful mentally and physically, sometimes just moving your body can change your mind. And that is something that I think is very, very Nordic, very Finnish.
Russ, I'm curious, after meeting Katja, did you do any ice bathing? Did you, or just go to the sauna and skip the hard part?
Actually, Katja invited me to come to one of her favorite spots to take a dip in the Baltic Sea, which I did on a snowy December evening. And let's have a listen to some of that tape.
Katja, please explain to us where we are and what we're about to do.
So we're standing in Helsinki. It's about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and it's pretty much pitch dark, except for the city lights, which we can see. And we're at Alla Sea Pool, which is nestled right, it's a floating sea pool complex with cold water swimming pool as well, right in the harbor of Helsinki. And I'm going to take you for your first ever cold water dip.
I am terrified.
Don't be terrified. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And you might even feel really fantastic afterwards. So we've got the mats here so that you don't slip, but also when it gets really cold, this would be icy and slippery.
Right.
So this ensures that you have a safe trip. And they've nicely lit up these candles here because this time of year, of course, we don't have that many hours of daylight because we're so far north.
Right.
So when we don't have sunshine, we make internal sunshine by going for a cold water dip or a sauna, or all these light displays and candles and things that add light but also guide the way, and kind of a design element makes it feel a little cozier. So when you go into the water for the first time, the water's about 3-4 degrees Celsius right now. You're going to feel a cold shock. So the best thing is to focus on your breathing so that when you're going into the water, you don't suddenly gasp and then get caught up in dealing with your gasp. So you just try to breathe in and out, and you There's nice stairs that take us into the water as opposed to a ladder or something trickier. So you can just take your time and go down. I wouldn't plunge right in, but I also wouldn't be too slow, because then you'll really realize how cold it is, and your instinct, your healthy instinct will be like, it's cold, I'm going to get out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's give this a shot. Oh yeah, this is already cold. And I'm
Yeah,
not even in
it
the water
is
yet.
already cold. So, shall I show?
Yes, please.
So essentially, you can do the same thing that I do once I get into the water, and at your own speed. But essentially, I'm just going to go right into the water, and I'll do a little loop, and then I'll come back. So I'm in the water, I would say 30 seconds to a minute and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, just be careful. It's a bit slippery. That's good.
Oh.
Perfect. And you don't even need to swim. You can just, that is perfect.
Oh, Lord. This is very cold.
It is very cold.
This is very cold.
Very, very insightful, very perceptive of you to notice. When did it dawn on you that it was time to leave?
About the second I put my first foot in.
Did you get right up to your neck? I mean,
I
how
was
far?
right up to the neck.
And were you wearing a wetsuit?
I would just a pair of swim trunks and a toque.
And none of that bear grease or the nothing, no insulating
Nothing else.
material.
Nothing else.
Right.
This is very cold.
It is very cold.
This is very cold. And now I'm getting out.
That's good, but you've done
Oh.
well. You were in actually for a long time. If we think about first timers, the first time I went in, I probably was in the water for 1 second, and then I shot
my
right
God.
out. I was like, oh my
I feel
God.
the electric. I'm feeling sort of a pulse
Yeah.
through my extremities. Oh my gosh. Okay, that was very cold but very invigorating. I do see how this could be a daily occurrence.
Yeah. And a lot of people do that. They use it as a way to just sort of reinvigorate themselves, leave their stress, their worries, if they're feeling a bit depressed or anxious, or there's something really troubling them, or even if physically they feel really weak. So it's like our pharmacy.
Right.
We go and we dip ourselves into better shape.
And what's amazing is how warm I feel right now compared to before I got in the pool.
Yeah.
So now I feel comfortable. I feel like I could go wander around downtown and get a cup of coffee.
Exactly. And this is where you have to be careful, because you get that rush, the endorphins, the physiological, everything kicks in, and you feel almost high. But you feel like you can do anything. You feel invincible, and as though you won't be cold.
Okay. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Katja.
You're welcome. Do you think you got...
You didn't sound very high to me. You sounded very numb. And I felt that you were like running on good Canadian automatic pilot, where we apologize. Sorry that I'm so cold.
Mm-hmm. I felt amazing after the experience. I can see how it could be habit forming. Once I came out of the sauna, I was ready to go back in. I was ready to go back into the sea. I was ready to repeat that a few times. And I will say I did make it back on my own before I left Helsinki.
Okay. And was that your Sisu kicking in?
That was my Sisu kicking in. That was also just the wanting to feel that electrification internally.
Okay.
It was well worth it.
So there is something to it. Have you done it here? Coming back, is there a way we can do it in Canada?
There is a very small community, I understand, in Toronto that will take polar dips in Lake Ontario, but there isn't a sauna close by, and it's at a relatively isolated location that you have to drive to, and that just kind of puts it off the map for me, unfortunately. So I'll have to wait for my next trip to Finland.
So Russ, this has been an interesting journey. So at the end, after you took your 2 dips, got on the plane and came back to Canada, as you were landing, what thoughts occurred to you about what we can do here in Canada that we can take back from your trip?
I would say there is something wonderful about the Finnish way of life in terms of their lack of attention to materialism, their lack of attention to consumerism. If you ask the average Finn something that would make them happy, it would be a glass of wine, a meal with a friend, a great record, a music experience. Very rarely is it a new car, a new set of clothes. And they incorporate this into almost every aspect of their life. They eat well. They have incorporated exercise as just a natural part of their day. They value friendships highly. They probably drink too much. But overall, they seem to have a much more balanced approach to life than I think we have here in North America. And I think this overall life philosophy is what contributes to their sense of happiness and what keeps them atop the World Happiness Index. Going back to Frank Martela, who we heard at the top of the episode, he believes that the secret to happiness involves not chasing happiness, which is more of a North American idea. Let's hear what he has to say.
Onni ei tule etsien, vaan eläen. That's a Finnish saying which means like happiness is not found by searching, but by living. So like if you too much concentrate on searching for it, then you probably miss it because like usually it's already there in your life. And like by chasing it from somewhere else, you miss out the sources of happiness that already are present in your life. So people might be concentrating too much on like, accomplishment at work, and then they miss out on being with their family and so forth. So in many situations, happiness would already be there if it would be just like sensitive to what we have rather than chasing what we don't have.
Frank's totally right. Happiness is an outcome. It's not a goal. It's an outcome of what you do. And when you take a country like Finland, which has strong social ties and strong social relationships, people are going to feel the happiness as an outcome of what they're doing. And what are they doing? They're relating to others. They're helping others. They're doing meaningful work. They're not pushing themselves to want more and to crave more. And so from the Finnish perspective, they're pretty happy.
And in his book, Martela writes about a study that happened at the University of British Columbia that I think really shines a light on this. Let's have a listen.
Yeah, it's like these professors, Elizabeth Dung and Lara Aikni, they have like done several studies where they give people $5 in the morning. So here's $5. And for half of the people, they say that here's $5, like make yourself happy, like buy something nice for yourself, like an ice cream. And for other half of people, say here's $5, make somebody else happy. So buy your friend an ice cream or donate it to charity, but do something that like helps other people rather than yourself. And then in the evening, they ask people, so how happy are you now right now? How are you feeling right now? And it turns out that those people who spent the $5 on other people actually feel happier in the evening than those people who spent the same amount of money on themselves.
They tested blood pressure.
Yeah, that was another study where they like had like even like a bigger kind of like donation. So it was like not $5, but it was $40, and it was 3 weeks in a row. So people were given like $40 3 weeks in a row, and these people were like kind of older adults with like some like high blood pressure. And they measured blood pressure before and after, and the results show that that group that gave $40 to other people 3 weeks in a row, their blood pressure like decreased, and it decreased like in a similar amount that if they would have like started a new diet or a new hobby like sport, like exercise or something like that. So that it was like a tangible effect even on some physical things, like when you're able to make a contribution toward other people.
You know, that's a great study that Dr. Martela cites, because the satisfaction we get from seeing the effects of what we're doing on other people is more than we will feel for ourselves. And when people are depressed, one of the things I tell my patients is, go volunteer, go do something, go help someone. And that will be getting you out of yourself. And when you get out of yourself, you start to feel better, because the challenge we're all facing is, what are we doing? What matters to us?
So you want to hear a joke, Jack? A philosopher walks into a bar, and a customer asks him, "What's the meaning of life?"
Yeah, so that's based on like true story. It has happened to me like several times in a bar that somebody comes to ask me the question. So I developed this one sentence answer, which was that meaning in life is about making yourself meaningful to other people. So it's about the meaningfulness to your life comes from when you feel that you're somehow meaningful to others. And
it sounds deceptively simple. I would say, any parent would say, well, I make myself meaningful by being meaningful in my child's life. But it goes far beyond that. What are some other examples?
Yeah. So parenting is like a good example, but like any friendship or like anything like that is also like quite meaningful often. But when people think about like the meaningful things in their life, most people start to think about their close relationships, about their family, about their friends, and the ability to spend time with them. But other thing is also this like sense of contribution, being able to do something good to other people. That's another like key element of meaningful living, that you feel that, through your work or through your hobby or through your activities in your daily life, you're able to somehow have a positive impact in the life of other people. So it can be like small things like, smiling at the cashier at the bar, or it can be like big things like donating money or feeling that through your work it makes some like big contribution. But that's these two elements, like close relationships and contribution. That's like what this meaning in life as regards other people comes from.
So Russ, it's a very profound message that Frank Martela is telling us, that the meaningfulness of life to ourselves is being meaningful to others. But what do you think after we've had this discussion around all of these different aspects of both your trip and Sisu and the Finns and happiness? What's the message for Canadians? What do you think we need to be taking away from this?
I feel personally, coming back, that I have embraced more elements of Finnish culture. I spend more time walking around my neighborhood, walking around the creek near where I live, and less time trying to get to a gym. I value quality time with a handful of people close to me rather than trying to get to big social events. All of these little things are contributing in a very meaningful way to my sense of happiness. I'm also being more conscious of how I'm contributing to other people's happiness. And that in turn is providing comfort.
So when it comes down to it, Russ, it just sounds like spend time with others, smile, strike up conversations, go for a walk. If you put out positive energy will come back to you as well. And it takes an effort, and that effort is Sisu. And we all have it. And I'm still not going to jump in the lake, although if you want to, folks, go right ahead. Thank you, Russ, for being our guest today, for taking us to Finland, coming back in one piece. You look like you've got all your fingers and toes, that you've really enjoyed yourself, and you've really made our session today exciting and meaningful.
Thank you so much, Jack. I had a great time chatting.
That's it for this episode of Eat, Move, Think.
Katja Pantzar is a Helsinki-based writer, editor, and journalist. Her newest book, Everyday Sisu, Tapping into Finnish Fortitude for a Happier, More Resilient Life, is out with Penguin Random House and will be published on March 15th, 2022.
Frank Martela, PhD, is a philosopher and researcher of psychology specializing in the question of the meaning of life. He teaches at Aalto University in Helsinki. His 2020 book is A Wonderful Life, Insights on Finding a Meaningful Existence. Dr. Jack Muskat is the clinical director of psychology here at Medcan.
And a special thanks for this episode going to Katja Pantzar, Sara Zaman, Paul Axman, Anna Kampas of the Finnish national broadcaster Yle, and Eric Pine from the Alice Spa in Helsinki.
We'll post links to both Frank and Katja online at the episode webpage, located at eatmovethinkpodcast.com.
Say hello or send us a tip or suggestion by emailing us at info@eatmovethinkpodcast.com.
Eat, Move, Think is produced by Ghost Bureau. Senior producer is Russell Gragg. Jasmine Ratch is managing producer.
Social media and strategy support is from Chantal Gertin and Andrew Imex. Christopher Shulgin is executive producer.
Remember to rate and subscribe to Eat, Move, Think on your favorite podcast platform. Follow our host, Sean Francis, on Twitter and Instagram at Sean C. Francis and Medcan at Medcan Live Well.
We'll be back soon with a new episode examining the latest in health and wellness.